Great. Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode of Computer Vision Talks. And today we have with us Ayush. Ayush is currently working as data scientist at LifeBytes. Prior to that, he was working with Dr. Pradosh as research assistant at IIT Delhi, where he worked to solve skin segmentation using unsupervised domain adaptation. Ayush's research interests lie mainly in image segmentation, semi-supervised and unsupervised learning, and model interpretability. Today, we are going to discuss his paper Unsupervised Domain Adaptation for Semantic Segmentation of NIR Images through Generative Latent Search, which was accepted as a spotlight paper at ECCV 2020. And this also happens to be his first paper. So we are in for a lot of learnings today. And we're glad to host you, Ayush. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for your introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be discussing my first paper, which is unsupervised domain adaptation for semantic segmentation of NIR images through generative latent search. This was done in collaboration with Prashant Pandey, who is a PhD student at IIT Delhi. Sambir Ambarkar, who was doing his RA-ship at IIT Delhi, and Dr. Pratosh AP. He is an assistant professor at IIT Delhi. So the structure of the talk is like we'll go through what motivated us to pursue this problem, what is the problem statement, what is the problem we are trying to solve, then what we proposed, that is actually generative latent search for segmentation, and then we'll look for what are the results, and then we conclude whatever we have learned. So to give you a like head start, I'm saying we are doing skin segmentation task in NIR images. So let's see why skin segmentation is an important problem to be answered. So skin segmentation can be used as a pre-processing step for various deep learning applications like facial recognition, human-computer interaction, and there is a research going on which says that the heart rate and respiratory rate can be monitored via skin. So for that purpose, skin segmentation, it's an important pre-processing step. Apart from this, there is a surveillance area where people are looking at segmenting out skin to find out the different attributes from it. But as we look, it's an interesting problem, but there are challenges which comes with the problem. So there are factors like illumination change, ethnicity, presence of background, and clothes, which are similar to the skin color adversely affect, because all the methods which try to solve skin segmentation depend on learning to find out the skin color and segmented out that. But the cases where there is no light or the light is low, what happens in that case? Um, so the most of the algorithms which are being trained are basically in a visible spectrum images, but they fail to work in the similar way when there is no light or low light, especially at the night. I would like to share one of the real-time example or which I faced while I was working as a data scientist as one of the video analytics and surveillance-based startups. So we were tasked to do facial recognition at one of the major event in India, and that too in January. So we deployed different cameras and you trained your model to detect faces. But so what happens is it was the entry of the visitors starts around 5 o'clock in the morning. So at that time in India, in Delhi, it was fog, and suddenly your cameras will switch from color mode to NIR mode. So what happens is like now your models are trained to work in the visible spectrum on the RGB images, and what feed is being fed is now of like in IR range. So the detection rate drops drastically, and you miss out like various faces which are coming into the crowd. So what is the solution to it? So the solution might be we use the infrared range to tackle this no light or low light conditions. So because in IR there is so the factors like illumination, ethnicity, presence of background, and these clothes are not this much prominent, and you can use it for the cases where there is no light or like in the night. And because like most of the deep learning which we are doing is like training models which works well in the daylight, but it's hardly case what happens in night, like how adversely these model detection, segmentation, how do they like perform. We should also have understanding of it. Uh, so we say that like we have a data which is available in skin in color domain. So it's like you have um, so we found a data basically which is a color segment colored data for skin segmentation, and we wanted to do a segmentation for NIR images. So we checked to find out if there is a solution and we can use the data to segment out images which are in NIR domain. So we checked for the electromagnetic spectrum. So the visible range basically lies from 400 meter to 700 nanometers, and the red color lies around 700 nanometer, and the IR domain starts around 1000 nanometer. So what we did was we said that okay, we'll use the R channel of these color images and use it to train a segmentation model which performs well on NIR images as well. So this was the whole plan, and let's see what are the problems are there in this setup and how do we tackle it. Please stop me if you have any questions, so it's clear to you.
No, so
So
far so good. Just one clarification is the NIR images are those near infrared images which are used in night conditions or dark
yes, yes,
situations,
yes.
right?
So if you might have seen the home cameras also, they this camera work in two modes basically. One is the RGB mode, and the one is it's IR mode. So those black and white images are basically IR images.
I got it. Okay.
So so the problem we have and the problem we are like trying to address in this research is like, can we use the data which is available in the visible domain to develop algorithms which for NIR image segmentation in an unsupervised domain adaptation scenario. So another thing is like, can we bring the data with in NIR image that is a target for us closer to the source rather than projecting into a domain invariant feature space. So most of the methods, what they do is like for domain adaptation, they project this data into a domain invariant feature space, which works for source and like it's invariant of the target domain. So what we are trying to do is like we are not bothered about the target domain. We don't assume that there's a target domain exists. We train our model assuming that we will bring target closer to source. Uh, and then like, can we show that this method works for when the cases where the domain shift is more? Because like the setup which we have done for you choosing R channel and NIR is basically to reduce the domain shift between the color spectrum and the IR domain. So will it be possible to use the same method for the cases where the domain shift is more? Also, the target data is not always available. So can we devise a method which is not like dependent on the target data? So these are the major points we'll be addressing throughout this presentation. So first point to start with is the data. So any deep learning model or you need to have a data. And when we looked, there was no data available for NIR skin segmentation. So we end up curating two data sets. First is the skin NIR vision data set, which was collected at IIT at a various location and various point of time. And another data set is hand gesture data set, which was already available, but it was for hand gesture classification. So we used the images from that data and annotated them so that we can use these both data sets for validation purpose. So SNV data has around 2000 images, and the hand gesture data has around 1000 images, and we use these data sets for validation purposes. So for problem setting, so as I said earlier also, so we use the data which is available for us in visible domain to train a model for NIR skin segmentation. So we use compact skin segmentation data as a source, and the target here is the NIR image data which we curated. So what we do is, from RGB images, we extract out R channel from the images, which will act as a source for us. And the target here is NIR images. What we are trying to do is we are trying to bring this target closer to the source through generative latent search and different techniques which we tried. So this is the problem setup. So you have the source as the R channel and NIR as the as a target. So before going ahead, so I would like to give you a brief about what are the different type of losses we used. So first one is the perceptual loss. First, perceptual loss was introduced by Fifi Lee and her group in a paper called Perceptual Loss for Real-Time Style Transfer and Super Resolution. So we borrowed this idea. It was published in ECCV 2016, and we borrowed this idea for improving our variational autoencoder. So we have two parts in the training network: variational autoencoder and the segmentation network, which we'll look in few of the slides. But in order to improve the variational autoencoder, we borrowed this idea. So what perceptual loss says is, like, suppose the images are perceptually similar, but there is a difference in the pixel. So based on the pixel-based losses, the images are still different. What they propose is, like, instead of computing pixel-based losses, we compute losses based on the features or so-called high-level representation of these images. So we borrowed this idea so that we like, instead of computing this pixel-based losses, we compute this high feature-based loss, feature based losses, and then try to improve. One is the latent space, which is learned by the variational autoencoder, and the reconstruction of these images should be, like, really well for the segmentation network to work. So this was the idea for bringing perceptual loss. Apart from that, we use SSIM loss, which is a structural similarity index metric map for finding the similarity between two images. So there are many ways you can find the similarity between the two images. One of them is MSE, MAE. But what happens is, like, they don't account for like structural information in the image. So it's these, both of them are just pixel based losses. So they compute the distance difference between the pixels. So what SSIM does is it uh, takes into account neighborhood pixels in the image, so that there is a preservance of luminance, contrast, and the structural information. So, and the SSIM like range is varies from -1 to 1. So we use it as a loss to compute the distance between, or the similarity between, two images, and 1 minus SSIM is the loss which we are using. Uh, apart from that, we are also using edge operator. We for edge operation, we use Sobel filters. One is the X directional kernel, and the other is the Y directional kernel. When you convolve in the original image, you get edges in the horizontal direction or the vertical direction. So uh, I'll I'll connect everything when we discuss the model architecture, because each thing helped us improve the reconstruction or the reducing the loss in some or other way. So we formulate, the formulation is such that, like, we are trying to bring target closer to the source in our source. So suppose you have two distribution, you have a source distribution and a target distribution, and you say that a point x tilde from the target, for any point x tilde in the target, we propose that there is a nearest clone exist in the source distribution. So which the distance between this nearest clone and the point from the target distribution is less as compared to any other point. So what we are trying is like, for any point in target distribution, we are finding a nearest clone in from the source distribution in order to ensure that the structural similarity of both the images is similar. So um, I'll show you when we discuss this latent search and how this thing help. But this concept of nearest clone in the source is the key point of our research. So like people generally try to bring both source and the target into a domain invariant space. But what we are proposing is that there exists a clone for any target image in the source domain. And we are trying to find out that nearest clone through optimization of the latent space. So our model looks like this. So you have a variation autoencoder stacked with a segmentation network. So G of I is the encoder and H of theta is the decoder. So X and X cap is the original image and the reconstructed image from the variation autoencoder. LR is the reconstruction loss plus scale divergence. And we are training on the source data. So the Z learns the source distribution. Uh, in addition to this, you have a P of psi, which is a segmentation network. We use UNet as a segmentation network. And from one of the layer of pre-trained UNet, we compute this perceptual loss. We take out features from this layer and compute the distance difference between those features when the image input image is a reconstructed image which is generated by the variation autoencoder, and simply the normal directly fed into a segmentation network image. So what is the difference between those images? We want to ensure that the noise or the difference which is induced by the variation autoencoder should be minimum, so that like the so that the segmentation network treat both the images in a same way. In addition to that, we use.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt in between. I have a few doubts. First thing is, what is the edge operator doing here? Second thing, can you give a walkthrough of how, like, you were what is your input, what happens to the input then, and can you go in a workflow like that in a very basic layman like language?
Sure. So I'll answer first what edge operator is doing. So basically, for training variation autoencoder in the difficult like data sets, your reconstruction has to be perfect. So in order to have like nice sharp edges, we used this edge operator. We concatenated this edge information into the decoder so that it helps decoder to generate sharp images, so that we can fed it to the segmentation network, and there is no loss of information due to variation autoencoder. So when we are learning this latent representation for the source, so the input here is R channel images. So we train our this. There are basically two steps for the training procedure. So this is the step one, where you train your latent space for source data, which is basically in this case R channel images. And then you have a segmentation network which is pre-trained on source data or R channel images to segment out mask. So what we do is we train a variational autoencoder, and then the image which is reconstructed from the variational autoencoder is fed to the segmentation network to predict out mask. So what we do is like we assume that when we do the same thing for a target image, it samples from source distribution only. So it samples from R channel distribution. It has to sample from the R channel distribution. So it implicitly reduces the domain shift between source and target. So in order to help variational autoencoder, because like when we started training, I think training the variational autoencoder was the most challenging part of the problem, because I mean, unless you get really good reconstruction, it's difficult for segmentation network to produce good masks. So this perceptual loss and edge operators came came handy, so that like these reconstructions are good. And we don't back propagate loss in segmentation network. The segmentation network is pre-trained. Only the loss is back propagated in the variational autoencoder part, so that it impacts the reconstruction of the images. So the segmentation network is just to see how the predicted masks are coming out, and if there is a difference between what the variational autoencoder is producing and what the real features are. So is it clear now, or like any other doubt you have?
Yeah, it is clear. And on what dataset was the segmentation network trained here?
Network was trained on R channel dataset. So it's basically we are training on the source. We are not using target here. So
And
that's why there is independence of target here, because in this process, the aim is to learn the good representation of like latent representation of the source, so that we can sample from it later when we try to bring target closer to the source domain.
understood. Great. Thank you.
Is it end-to-end training? Like
Yeah.
all the parameters are getting updated, right?
So segmentation network is not is pre-trained,
Pre-trained.
and it's basically we are training only variational autoencoder, and but the loss we are computing at the end of segmentation network, we are back propagating into variational autoencoder.
Okay, got it.
So, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the process, after the variational autoencoder has reconstructed, you observed that maybe the edges reconstruction is not better. So, to aid the process, you chose this, or is it any standard procedure with variational autoencoders that there are certain aiding processes that you add?
Actually, I mean, it's obviously we saw the reconstruction, and like at that point of time, it was not good because there was lossy reconstruction. So, in order to aid actually for decoder to reconstruct good images, so that there is no loss because of this variational autoencoder, we added these edge operator and the perceptual loss into this whole process.
Okay.
I guess that's clear.
Okay. So let's move to the second part of training, which is basically the latent search. So from here, we can take away that like you have a latent representation or latent space Z, which is trained on like source domain, which is R channel images. So now we'll try to find out the closest match for target in the source latent space. What we do is like you take an image and you provide it to the edge operator and you produce it to decoder for any z, which is randomly generated number. You predict an image. So this image which is coming as a prediction is sampled from source distribution, which is R channel in our case. And now you compute the SSIM loss between the original image and the predicted image. So the idea for using SSIM loss is that both the images should look similar, even if the predicted image is coming from the source distribution. And you use this loss to update this latent vector, so that it's kind of like gradient descent for latent vector, where you're trying to find out what is that latent vector which reduces this SSIM loss between your original image and the predicted image. And we continue this process till there is a convergence in the SSIM loss. And once there is a convergence, we have that latent vector Z, uh, which is sampled from source distribution, but has the attribute or looks similar to the NIR image or the target distribution sample. We provide it to decoder part, and which produces the which produces an image x tilde of s, and we provide this image to segmentation network, uh, which produces the mask. So now your model, which was trained on a source only, is now working for target image, target domain also, by bringing target closer to source by sampling from the source itself. Is it clear, or like any doubt you have? So please ask me if you have any doubt in this process.
I guess none. It is clear so far.
Yeah, so it's kind of like gradient descent, but we are doing it in the latent space of source, so that like you have that z vector which is updating in this formula. It's basically a gradient descent only, but we are computing, we are reaching to a point.
Like a back propagated gradient descent.
Not a back propagated. It's like you compute the loss, and then you find the derivative, its change with respect to z, and now you update your z in such a way that like you again compute your loss. Yeah, so based on this updated loss, you compute your loss, and then it's a like again like round robin kind of thing, where you update till you reach this like convergence. So you say that, okay, now the loss has minimized or saturated. Now this is the closest sample I can get from for this target, and now this you use this z vector to produce an image which is sampled from the source distribution and provided to the segmentation network for getting the prediction mask. So the whole idea here is to find that closest clone of your target vector in the source latent space.
Z is a feature vector, right?
Z is basically, yeah, a latent vector basically.
Yeah. So in this, basically we are treating Z as parameter and updating it using gradient descent. So
Yes.
like, yeah, it's a bit confusing to me. Like Z is actually a latent vector, but we are treating it as a parameter, like something like weight for.
Yeah. So idea here is to find out the Z which produces the image which looks very structurally similar to your target image, but sampled from this source distribution. So you trained a variational autoencoder, you have a source distribution Z. So for each sample, when you provide as like for for encoder generate this Z for target image. So but this Z is sampled from the source distribution only. So what we are trying to do is like we are trying to find out Z which is sampled from the source distribution but generates image which is really similar to our target image. So what you're asking is like we are updating Z by every iteration. So just like you update your weights. So instead of so when you do gradient descent, you like derivate it with respect to weights. Like what is the impact of loss if we change the weight? So here also we are doing is like what is the impact on loss, which is SSIM loss, if we change the latent vector in a particular direction. So we assume that like after a point it reaches to that nearest clone which minimizes this loss.
Yeah, got it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks. Anything else? I mean, is it clear?
I don't think now. You can please continue.
Okay. So, what, why our method is different from the other approaches is like most of the other unsupervised domain adaptation tasks, what they do is like they try to project into a domain invariant space. So in projecting that also they use this target data although in unlabeled format, so that like you have your model have information about what is the source domain and a target domain. But what we do is like we train our model in for the source domain only, and we bring target closer to source under the distance metric, which we are using as a structural similarity based index. And we ensure that because of using this SSIM loss, we are preserving the structural information when we are like projecting a target closer to the source domain. So this is the setup. We did our experimentation on Cynthia and Cityscape also. You have a source domain and a target domain. And we say that like when we sample from the variational autoencoders, latent space itself, there is a um, reduction in the domain shift, because we are sampling from the source domain for an input, which is a target from a target domain. So I hope the process is clear. I'll just like go through it, because the first step one, we use R channel for training this whole process. Once it is trained, you have a latent representation or like latent space for source. Once it is trained, in step two, we do inference. For inference, we provide this variational autoencoder with target images, which is NIR images. And now we say we sample from this source distribution another image which should look like very similar to the target image, but sampled from this source distribution. So this is a two-step process where you, in step one, you train your variational autoencoder, and in step two, you find the nearest clone by optimizing your Z vector to find the nearest clone in the source latent space. So the results, so we compared our result with standard UDA methods, and the source only is in this case is when you have a segmentation model which is trained on R channel images and tested on the NIR images. So for that purpose, we use two data sets, as I mentioned earlier, SNV and hand gesture data set. For segmentation model also, we use two backbones, two segmentation model. One is UNet with EfficientNet backbone, and another is DeepLab v3 with ResNet as the backbone. And we compare it with the other standard domain adaptation task on our on compact skin segmentation data sets. So one of the factor which why our method worked well as compared to them is like, because we don't depend on the target, as the number of samples in the targets are less. So these methods required good amount of samples to learn that domain invariant feature space. But in our case, our whole target is to learn the latent representation or latent space for source, from where we can sample from the target when the target image comes. So we are the training is independent of target. So we use target only when there is inference, or when we do the latent search. Also the qualitative comparison with different tasks. So on the leftmost corner is column is image, whereas the rightmost is the ground truth. And source only the case where you test on the NIR when the segmentation network is trained on R channel images. And we can see that like it captures these sharp edges, and the continuity is also there. Although, and one of the like good results is this second row, where the object is far from the camera, and most of the cases other methods, they just it's not easy for them to learn. But like in our case, it learned really well, because there might be a case in the source where the similar situation might have arisen. So these are the prediction masks. So Also, I would like to like visualize how this latent search work, because it's difficult to like visualize how I might have explained. So on the leftmost column, it's the real target, and the second column is the source only, the case where we are testing on the NIR images. And VA reconstruction is the case where we are providing the segmentation network with the images which are reconstructed from the variational autoencoder. So with as the images are sampled from variational autoencoder itself, it shows that there is the performance is itself better as compared to the source only case, because we are sampling from source like distribution. Even if the image input image from the target is from the target distribution, so it's implicitly reducing the domain shift between the source and the target. And as we do the latent search to find out the actual clone, there is improvement in the mask which is produced by the segmentation network. So I have shown the results after 30 iterations. So what happened, what we observed after 100 like 90 to 100 iteration, the loss saturated for both the cases, for both the data sets. And this is the best like clone we could find for any target, for the target image. And when we projected into provided into the segmentation network, it produced the like good mass as compared to other UDA methods also. And it gradually improved as we are moved closer to the clone of what we are finding the clone in the source distribution. So any question in this regard?
I guess not.
Okay. So the instead of computing the SSIM loss, we tried to find out what are the different distance metric we can use to compare images. And we compared with mean absolute error and the mean square error, and we show that like with SSIM there is a better performance as compared to the other losses. And for both the data sets, you can see that the latent search saturates around like 80 to 90 iterations. So you have your nearest clone after 90 or 100 iterations. So what one thing we didn't expected it to work is to work on the like urban scene segmentation data sets. So for Cynthia and Cityscape, but like we spent good amount of time to train variational autoencoder, because the whole idea of this problem and how we formulated the problem was to reduce the domain shift between the R channel and the NIR domain and NIR band. But like the cases where the domain shift is more, so Cynthia is a synthetic data set, and Cityscape is the data from real world scenario. But it worked really well, and it was a surprise for us also. And it outperformed all the other method for both 13 classes and 16 class scenario. So I would like to point out the limitation here also. So a limitation in the future direction. So one of the major limitation what it has, it's a two-step training process. So once you train your source, and then you have to step 2 for finding out the nearest clone, which is the latent search, which takes around 1 to 2 milliseconds. But the cases where you're handling videos, you have 25 frames per second. It becomes the latency becomes more as we go for a longer duration. So this is one of the limitation of this work, and we are the future might be to look for the optimization cases where the computation time is less to find out the nearest clone in the source domain, or we can incorporate this loss into one step training process also. And other challenge where we spend most of the time is like training the variational autoencoder. So it was the central pillar for our project was to learn a very good representation of from the source domain, and we spend most of the time this and we introduce different losses edge losses and perceptual loss, just to make sure that the variational autoencoder learn a good representation so that we can find um, a nearest clone in the source domain, a source latent space for a target. All and we can expand this idea to multiple target cases. So suppose you have a source which is color images, and you have different target which is suppose a grayscale image or a NIR image, and you are in a situation like you want to bring multiple target closer to source. So at the end of the day, your both NIR image or the gray channel image should look a color, and should your segmentation network should not be able to differentiate whether it's coming from the actual source or coming from the target. So this is one of the future direction, and few of the I would like to conclude what are the like things we achieve from performing everything. So first is like we propose this novel unsupervised domain adaptation method where you don't have access to the target. It solely depends on the source and how well you're learning the source distribution. Um, we propose that like you have a closest clone in the source based on some distance metric, where in our case it's SSIM, and we use different optimization algorithms to find that nearest clone. We demonstrate our proposed method with comparison to standard UDA methods on these two skin segmentation um, tasks or data sets in NIR domain. Also, we performed better in comparison to other methods in for adapting Cynthia to Cityscape. So we can use this method for a domain generalization um, where you have multiple sources, multiple target scenario. Uh, so I would like to thank all of you for joining, and the code is available on GitHub, and do check it out. And if there is any feedback or any suggestion, do let us know. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we are open to questions now. You can either post or unmute and go ahead. And it was a great talk, a lot of clarity. We kept pausing in between and asking questions. So yeah, if anyone has any question, you can either put it in the chat box or unmute yourself and go ahead. Until then, I'll shoot in with my questions. Okay, great. So yeah, my question would be since after undergraduation you were working in industry, then why again jumping back to academia? Or was it like a plan all along to do some work experience first and then do a master's? How is it?
Actually, it's not planned. While I was doing my master's, I was working. I instead of going for internship, I did my thesis there, which was in speech domain. So I wanted to like take a break from there and like work for industry and see like how things work. And after working in industry, I said like, okay, now like it's time that like you can focus on research. So that was the whole idea. So like for joining, so as you know, like you need a good profile for that. So, and paper is one thing like which everyone looks for. So like it was not a big plan. I just wanted to have a paper from this RA ship, and fortunately I got it. And then I think like my next plan is to join a PhD program so that like I can continue doing good work.
Awesome. So wasn't it a big risk on your part to leave a job and take up an RA-ship, or?
Yeah, it's risk, like monetary it is, because like what we get paid for RSF is not like 1/4 of what industry pays us. So it was risk, but still I'm like, I don't have any regrets that like I left the job, because the knowledge is there, and like what I learned over the last like 1.5 years is like really amazing. So I think it will be used like later.
And since you talk about switching from speech to image, any like I was working in speech, I didn't like it. It was mentally exhausting. I just left it as soon as I could.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about you?
Like as compared, what I felt is like image is like very intuitive. I mean, you can see things happening. So for
Right.
speech, you have to listen like small change in pitch, and like you have to listen, or like otherwise you have to visualize it by different tools,
Yeah.
and
Heat
so
maps and spectrograms, you know.
FPKM values, I guess, not FPKM. Some you project it to the frequency domain, and you see there like
Yes.
these. So it's not very intuitive. So I feel the image is like very intuitive and like easy to eh, understand, like learn. So, but the whole idea from starting was to like be good with the deep learning part. So irrespective of in which domain we are applying it. So like if you have a strong background on that, I think like medical domain. So I have knowledge of medical domain also, because here I'm like working in the life cancer domain. So in model interpretability. So you have, if you have a good base of like understanding of good concepts, then it is doesn't matter like in which domain you apply. It's just like
Yes.
one is easier than other, more
Right.
intuitive.
So your job, like the first one after undergraduate, was in image domain or no?
So I didn't I did job after a master's only. So it was in video analytics and surveillance, and that was like really cool jobs, I would say,
Okay, so clear
because
my misconception here. What I have observed it in India specifically, it is easier to get a NLP job in data science than a computer vision job. What do you say?
uh, I don't know. I found like computer vision. Uh, I don't know. Like actually, I don't have any experience with NLP, but I think like I suit for computer vision. That's why I got a job in computer vision.
Right, right, right. Okay, so in PhD also you want to proceed in the medical imaging domain.
Not so it's like imaging is sure. I don't know which part of the imaging, but I would like to continue in the imaging.
And since when we were starting with the talk and it was not being recorded, you mentioned saying that reviewers asked you some questions and you answered them well. Would you like to share some of them?
Yeah,
What were the
so what
comments?
happens is like what I felt is like the reviewer also look for like whether it beats SOTA methods or like SOTA baseline. Why didn't you compare with this and that paper? So like once we submitted the paper, we didn't stop there. So we continued working it so that like we can compare it with the other method, because those questions were expected. And when you are proposing your own data set, so if you don't show it on the standard data sets, even we have like shown these methods on our data set, reviewer I don't think will appreciate it much as like we show our method on their data set. So uh, we knew that these questions were coming, and so we prepared like in advance for them.
Right. So one more question would be, I have observed this trend that when we are training the generative models, we are not exposing it to the actual data. Say if you're performing some kind of, tumor detection, then during the training, you're not passing the images which have tumor. You're giving just the good images, and during test, you're making it face the tumorous images. Why do you think that is happening? Like I couldn't really figure out hence the doubt.
So I mean I really don't have an answer to that actually. So because uh, we worked like on the source domain also only. So what we explored is like we didn't kept this like tumor images or like part of data for testing. We expose the data, all the data for like a generative model, and then we say that okay, you learn well when we pass our like target domain, you give me a good reconstruction or like good sample for it. So we wanted to make sure that it does well uh, for the data we like expose it to. So and for that we didn't want it to like spare any data, any single image. So we expose it to all the data or the images we have.
Okay, I see. I asked this because you said, that during the segmentation network was pre-trained on another network, and yeah.
So what happens is like the segmentation network was trained on our channel, like it was pre-trained.
Yeah.
So when
Okay.
we try to segment out the images which are from NIR domain, so it won't work well because you have a different set of weights or like different set of input. You are trained for different set of inputs. So like for that purpose, we tried to bring this target closer to the source so that like this target looks like, so we can fool that segmentation network of saying that okay, this is source only, you do well on it.
Right.
So that's the whole concept of it.
Since you've been an RA for such a like for an year almost, so some specific questions on that. One would be okay. So this paper was a year-long paper, right? It took you a whole year to start and finish this.
No, actually, so like we relentlessly worked on this. Like we like kind of marathon. We had a marathon work for the. We worked for 6 months on only this work. So there are like two other colleagues also. So we were trying to finish it within 4 months so that we can target for Mikai, but it didn't happen. So like it took 6 months for us to uh, push it for a publication, and then another like 1 or 2 months for like getting the other results. So it took around 8 months to complete the project.
And there's one question that I have, heard from so many of my undergraduate peers and my juniors. How frequently do you meet your supervisor? Like, even if it is an internship or an RA-ship, how frequently is the meeting?
I mean, it was the best part of it. Like I can straight away go and like you don't have a formal like email to like whether we can meet or not. Like we just like have a chat on like WhatsApp. Okay, like are you available? I'll just drop in to like sometimes to show what is the progress. Sometimes to ask the reviews on what we are doing and like any suggestion, any help. So the meeting was like not that limited to the time we meet in the office. It was continuous. Like in the morning, you have a small chat. Okay, this is what I'm trying, and like if you have any suggestion, just give it to me. So it was like I mean, it was a wonderful experience. So there was no formality of like you have a like RA and like PI. So it was like really good for in that part.
But then again, we are talking about pre-COVID era, where people
Yeah.
could enter
Yeah,
into
yeah.
labs without
Yeah,
much.
after like COVID, like some these setups won't work. So like in our case also, it became really difficult to schedule a meeting because we are not used to it. Like we go like say, okay, are you available, and just like drop into like for some feedback and like some suggestions.
Right. So one more question. This is a very good, like this is a situation I face sometimes. Like a professor tells you like, okay, you want to do this, then do these three things first, and then come back to me. And now I'm stuck on one of those three things for almost a week, and I'm not getting back to my supervisor, and there's a mental block. I'm scared also that I'm not communicating what doing, and
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a communication gap. How do you suggest dealing with it?
I mean, we also faced. So like, like for a time, like 15 days, he went to his home, and then like for 15 days there was no communication, and we were not getting results. So it just stressed that out. Like, what will we show? Like once he come back,
Right.
okay, so we don't have any results. So, but the thing is like it's for like the advisor to like comfort you that like okay, you don't have to prove anything. We are doing it together. So he said like you are not doing it alone and you cannot do it alone. So we have to do it together. So like if you don't communicate it with me, then like it will be difficult for me to give suggestion. I don't know where you are stuck. Even if you are like doing it, just meet me regularly. So just say hi and like what are you doing? Where code are you doing some coding or like you're reading something? Just we'll have a small 10-15 minute discussion and then like we'll wait for next day. So yeah,
On
it was
email
not
that hi becomes sorry.
so meeting was not always to show results or like get suggestion. It was just sometimes it was formal, informal meetings also. So that actually helped so that like you don't have this pressure. Okay, I have to prove him, like I have to show him results. So that actually helped. So that additional burden is not there. So only the problem is what we are like tackling now.
Right. On email, that random hi becomes very tough. So
Yeah, yeah. So email, it's
yeah,
like personally, I don't feel like it's very difficult to connect with emails and because it takes time for him to respond and look at the calendar. But yeah, so just drop in, say hi, okay, you discuss for 5-10 minutes, or you're walking in the corridor. Also, you have we had meetings while having coffee or tea or walking
Right.
towards lab, yeah, some random places we had meetings. So that helps and that motivates you also. If you have a meeting with your advisor in the morning, then you're you're sorted out for the day. Okay, I don't have that pressure now. I can work. I focus on the work now. So
Right.
that it's on your relation with advisor. It's really
Pre-COVID was a golden era. Last February itself, I was working under this amazing supervisor, and I would take my laptop in my hands and walk into his lab if he's not taking a class, and he's sitting there, and I'll show him this is the error, and he would debug it. But now, since that was last
yeah.
February, after that, everything is on a strained note.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it is definitely.
that was a lot of good interaction, and since you're going for a PhD, I'm looking forward, and we all are looking forward to so much more work from you. So much more great papers, spotlight papers, and whatnot. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks for
Uh,
hosting me also. You are doing really well. Sometimes I also go and check out what are the other papers, and after a year or so, it will have a very good catalog of computer vision papers. So it will be
that's what.
really interesting.
Yeah, that is what I have the vision in my mind. After 10 years, we are having a Wikipedia of solid papers in every
Yeah,
domain.
yeah.
And
Yeah. You don't have to look for someone to explain the paper to you. There are people
right,
who are explaining their own paper. So
right.
it's amazing.
Like there are some papers I so desperately want the authors to come. I've been emailing them. They're not on Twitter, and it is very tough to get through them. But so I have to read those paper by myself. But I'm hoping that CVT goes up to a reach that now if
Yeah,
anyone wants a paper to be read on CVT, they can get it read. But I guess that is a lot of
yeah,
time in
yeah.
future, right? So yeah, it was great hosting you with us today. A lot of
Thank you.
insights into different stuff, so many informal discussion, no questions. I guess that's it for today. We don't have any more questions in the chat box. Yeah, we were bugging you too much during the talk itself. So yeah, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay, bye everyone. Have a
Bye
great
bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye, Ayush. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.